In this environment where everything just feels like financial pressure, right? Like all the things are so expensive. I always tell people insurance isn't going to make you money, but it can save your business.
Gloria Steinem once said, "We will never solve the feminization of power until we solve the masculinity of wealth." Barbara Provost and Maggie Nielsen are the team at Purse Strings that will help you navigate the ins and outs of financial independence so that you can be financially fearless. This is Women in Money, the shit we don't talk about.
Today, we have a special guest on our podcast. We have Carmen Alvarez, who is one of our Purse Strings approved professionals, but also just an expert in business insurance, which I don't think we've talked about after like 120 plus episodes. So I'm so excited to finally get this covered. So Carmen, before we dive into all of our questions, can you share a little bit about who you are and what you do with the audience?
My name is Carmen Alvarez. I own the Insurance Pros. I do everybody's favorite boring thing, insurance. I've said this before, and I always say this, like when we were in fourth grade, at least when I was in fourth grade, they used to do this career day where they would bring all, parents in from different careers, and they would have little tables and talk to us about what they do. And nobody in fourth grade was like, I want to be an insurance agent. That's not a thing. This is one of those fields that you fall in like out of necessity or because maybe it's in the family. And so, yeah, I didn't think this is where my life was going to take me, but it did. And yeah, I enjoy it. I will say that this year in particular was hard with all of the hoopla politically because it did greatly impact health insurance in particular.
So do you do all types of insurance, or what insurance do you do? I guess there's 1,000 types.
So it is a full service brokerage firm, which means all of the things. But I always say this, and as business owners, especially women, we are used to doing all of the things all of the time, but that's not feasible, right? And so I have a great team. So as a firm, we handle business, liability, employee benefits, which is really my main focus, as well as home and auto. But again, my personal focus is the employee benefits side of the business.
Awesome. And so we know business owners like avoid insurance until typically it's too late. And then you're like, oh, I kind of wish I had that, something went wrong. So what's the real risk of waiting too long to get that kind of insurance?
Insurance is not like Amazon Prime. You can't click it on after the problem shows up. You know what I mean? And so once there's a claim, a lawsuit, a diagnosis, or even a hint of risk, carriers will exclude or decline you altogether. And that's the risk. The biggest risk, it's not the loss, it's being uninsurable when, you finally care or when something arises.
Yeah. And, sometimes business owners don't know what they don't know about business insurance. So let's dive into that a little bit. So when women have a business, like how do they know what kind of business insurance they're going to need and kind of what kind of costs are involved and things like that? How do you determine what kind of insurance you're going to need?
When anybody starts a business, the first thing, liability insurance always. Like you don't want to, that's not something you want to skip. It protects your business from other people's problems, clients, vendors, the public. It's usually very, very affordable, and it allows you to sign contracts. It allows you to sign lease space. 99.9% of, if you want to open up a brick and mortar or just even like an office space anywhere, they're going to want to see your general liability. And it allows you to partner with larger companies as well. And I always tell people, like anything else, the foundation is important. It doesn't mean you buy everything, but it does mean you need to build the floor before you decorate your house. Like you can't, you know what I mean? You can't walk around, right, with all of the bells and whistles and like not the main thing. And that the general liability piece is the most important for sure.
Okay. So when you're talking about general liability, and I'm thinking small business, now you might have some women out there who own a nail salon. You might have some women who do consulting. You might have women who do yoga shops. You might have some women who do something out of their home. So it's quite different versus, if you're doing something out of your home versus if you have a brick and mortar versus if you have There's so many different types of insurance. Where do you start?
Again, the general liability piece is the primary piece. If your business interacts with humans in any way, you need liability coverage.
Got it. Okay.
Now, there's a conversation to be had where some people might need that plus something called professional liability. So accountants, insurance brokers, an insurance broker, they won't even give us a contract without a professional liability in place. So if we don't have a contract, we can't talk about that product. We can't sell it. So there are certain industries that are very specific in regards to what liability coverage is needed first and foremost. And usually that's either that PL, the professional liability versus the general liability. But the minute you have an office space that is outside of your home, that general liability needs to typically also be in place.
And so for that, not the general liability, but the first one you said, how much is that like a month? Like $20 a month, 200, 2,000? Like what are we kind of talking in a range? Because I know when you start a business, it's just like every bill is being slapped at you from registration and websites and everything else. So what is kind of the cost? I know, of course, it's a range. What are we kind of looking at?
So general liability can typically cost from the lowest I've ever seen is like 300. A lot of carriers have this minimum premium, like it could have cost 100, but we're not charging less than 300 type of thing. I think that number's moved up to 500 for the year. Professional liability is going to depend on what you do and how much you make. For instance, and I'm going to talk about insurance professional liability because insurance broker, they're going to ask questions like, how is your business broken up? Like, how much of your business is in employee benefits versus property and casualty? Under that umbrella falls like general liability, workman's comp, home and up. Like, they ask you these questions and they want you to break it up. And then how much do you think you are going to make for the year? Liability insurance premium is going to be tied to what you do and how much exposure there is. And the best way for an insurance company to understand the risk is to understand how exposed you are. And that's typically through the amount of dollars you're projecting to make for the year. A company that makes $100,000 a year is not going to pay the same amount in insurance than a company that brings in $1 million, right? Because that $1 million company is obviously exposed a whole lot more.
And so how does having kind of the right insurance actually make a small business more competitive when it comes to like hiring or partnerships or growth?
So different things for different reasons. Employee benefits is going to give you an edge because not only does it give you credibility with those that you want to hire, but the people that you do hire, you retain them so they stay longer when they feel protected. And that's a big sticking point right now with people, especially with all of the things going on around the conversations of health insurance in general at large. I often have these conversations with people where they're like, man, I just need to get a part-time job that offers health insurance at this point because it's so expensive on the individual market, unless you qualify for a subsidy, right? In regards to liability and workman's comp and all of the other things that cover your business, partnerships, corporations won't touch uninsured vendors. Insurance gives permission to the owners to think bigger without as much fear.
That's interesting when you look at it from that perspective as well.
It's a confidence capital. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it says you're legit, for sure.
Let's take a quick pause to hear from this week's episode sponsor.
Let me ask you something. You built a successful business, but does your financial plan actually support your whole life beyond just your work? Hi, I'm Randall Franklin with Franklin Wealth Management in Madisonville, Kentucky. I work with female entrepreneurs and business owners like you to create personalized strategies that support your entire life, not just your business. Women often face added pressure to balance family, work, and major financial decisions without clear guidance. Too often it feels like you're expected to choose between your career and your life. My approach starts by understanding your full picture, both financial and non-financial, so that your plan actually works for you. If you're ready to take a step back, see the big picture, and get clear on what matters most, let's start there. You can find the link to schedule a call with me in the show notes, and I would love to help you take that next step with confidence.
Now back to our show.
So, what's the biggest insurance myth you hear from women business owners that you wish you could just retire immediately?
Too small to need insurance.
Can you expand on that a bit?
For sure. When I talk to people and maybe they're talking about health insurance or their home and auto, and I know they're a business owner, they're like, oh, I just work from home and I just do this on the side or whatever. And the truth is, the small businesses are the most exposed.
Wow.
They really are. Because if you make an error or something happens, people, and we're just in such a litigious state, right? You hear it all the time for all of the things, some valid, some not. And it just doesn't matter. Once that lawsuit hits, if you're not protected, if you don't have certain things in place, you're going to lose it a lot faster than a larger company who has the means to fight and argue and, place their bets on their position. So yeah, being small doesn't make you invincible. It makes you vulnerable.
Mm-hmm. Got it.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And so do you also offer, the big thing is cybersecurity then also, we're all on our computers and all the cybersecurity. Do you offer cybersecurity insurance as well?
Yes. So cyber insurance has definitely just really grown in the space these last few years. And I encourage everyone to make sure a lot of these general liability or BOP policies, BOP stands for business owner policy, where it's kind of like I don't want to call it a hybrid. It's like a package deal. It includes the general liability and it includes insuring your computer and like your business property. Some of it includes maybe product, maybe you sell, maybe you make candles, out of your home even. And it'll include like the inventory. And a lot of these BOPs are now including, a nominal cyber package as well, like 25,000. And that's small potatoes. If you ever are in a situation where there's a cyber breach and somebody can actually like connect the dots that their information was taken and used and abused because of the cyber breach that happened through your company, that's huge. That's a huge, huge risk right now. Anybody who stores information, any of those things, you're, leaving yourself open to some major issues, financial and legal. I'm sure everybody gets those notices. I get one of those notices like once a month where, hey, we had a data breach and we just need to let you know. And it doesn't look like, anything's happened, but we see that your information could have been compromised. And here's a free, check your credit score for a year. Those cost money. Think about the mail. Think about the fact that you're paying for that free check-in or whatever. That's not going to cost $25,000. You know what I mean? Like, so you have to really understand, you know, what it is that you do, how you're doing it. Everybody's doing everything digitally now, and so just kind of really take the steps for making sure that you've closed the gap on that exposure for sure.
Yeah, I know. I just hear we hear it all the time on the news or whatever about all these data breaches and all these things. And I know there's so much, cybersecurity you can do on your computer and things like that. But when your focus is making candles, it's a lot to manage. I mean, it's another world and so it is. I'm glad there's some coverage on that as well because it's a lot. It's overwhelming and you don't know what you don't know half the time.
Yeah, that's exactly it. That's it, right? Yeah. Can you give us a real example of, where insurance protected a woman-owned business from something that could have shut her down?
I have a perfect example. This one falls into EPLI, which is employment liability insurance. And that's a different insurance policy that you want to have in place if indeed you have employees, right? And in this scenario, I had a client who we went through the whole package. My job is to research what you have, review it, compare it to what the other things are that are available, and read through the documentation to see if there's any gaps. And when I went back to her, I was like, you're overinsured here, because that's a thing too. You don't need to be overinsured, You're underinsured here. And by the way, you have a staff of like 9 people. You might want to put in PLI. And she's like, I don't think I need that. Okay. By the way, this is a photography studio. About 6 months later, she calls me in a panic, and she's a really good friend of mine. And she's like, I need to talk to you. Did we ever move forward with that EPL? And I'm like, no. And I forwarded her the email because I always recap my meetings, like, "Ugh." And I said, no, you said that we would touch base on it the next year. And she said, I have a problem. And I said, what happened? And, this photography studio was doing boudoir photos. They were opening that up, which is, I don't know if you know what that is. It's like sexy photos. I don't want to say scantily clad because it's not. It's just like, you take pictures, tasteful pictures in lingerie, whatever. And they had this person from, I think, Canada come in that was a specialist in that field and basically was doing mock-ups, and like they had like a whole training session of like 2 days or whatever. Anyway, there was one employee who stated that she felt that the entire training session was inappropriate and it likened it to sexual harassment, because we're talking about boudoir, like some of them, sometimes you're naked. And there was a whole thing around that. And she was adamant that she felt like this was inappropriate. And so we walked through that and talked through that. And it didn't go anywhere, but it could have. And that's the thing that would have protected her for that. General liability is not going to protect you for that. Workman's comp doesn't protect you for that. And so the EPLI, had it been in place, if it would have moved forward, would have protected her. Now, thankfully, they were able to come to an agreement. She had to, the lady quit and she gave her severance. Like she just kind of like paid it out to be like, okay, here you go. Thanks, for your service. But it's things like that that can arise. And, she put better things in place, like when you hire people, if you're going to hire somebody for that department, make sure you have like an ironclad business, contracts for them understanding what it is that they're doing, signing off on it, all of the things. I introduced her to one of my best friends who happens to be a business attorney, and she was able to put together documentation for her that, like employee contracts that were specific to that department of her company.
It sounds overwhelming, and you hate when it's like, it's always 6 months after you talked about it, and we'll come back to it in 6 months. And it's that thing is you don't think you need it. And then it's like, shit, I need it,
100%. 100%. I'll give you another quick example, and this is real, and it's close to my heart because I just went through something this last quarter. It was a health scare, and, it could have been the big C, and it wasn't. And I'm thankful and grateful. But another friend of mine who also owns a business, who I do all of their insurance for, I talked about short-term disability. And I was like, why don't you, provide this? We can do a carve out for the management company where it's employer paid and everybody else can do voluntary. And she basically was like, I will check on that later, not right now. Then she decided, okay, let's do it. And we did all the paperwork, which she was traveling and doing all these kinds of things. And she never solidified the contract. And right now, my very good friend was indeed diagnosed with cancer and is going through radiation treatment. And the first thing she did was say, did we ever solidify that short-term disability? And the answer was no.
I'm sure you hate giving that answer.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. It happened the most during COVID.
Yeah.
Employers came to me and said, did we ever finally do this? Or, whether it was sometimes life, like it's so inexpensive to put together an employer paid life policy for your employees. It's like $3-5 a month per employee. When you're doing it in a group, yeah, you're getting 25,000, but it's something, right? And the answer has been, was no. And so now, or not now, because I always present it, I always bring it up, but I'm a little bit more, not pushy, but I definitely talk about these things and just make it clear like, this is a really inexpensive way to protect yourself, your employees. And so I definitely bring it up a lot more often and during my check-ins, not just at Regal, because it feels terrible to say to someone, no, I I reached out to you, but you were here, you were there, and it's just such a terrible thing. And so now my good friend is going through these therapies and radiation treatments, but also working. I saw her post a live. She was at a networking event, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh,
Yeah. It's tough. It's tough.
It's tough, and it's just, no one has the goggles to see the future. And so it's always like, is Carmen upselling me, or do I really need this? As a small business owner, every expense is really important. So you don't want to overpay, but you don't want to underpay. Like, it's always teetering these fine lines. And even your example of the woman who started talking about it and started the paperwork, but just never locked it down. I mean, we hear a lot about that with estate plans as well, where we're so close to the finish line and it needs that one more signature or, notarization. And we kind of just push it off, even though we're 90% there, And so it's so hard because you just never know when something will happen. No one has those future goggles. And if you do, send me a pair. I'll send you my address. Like,
And in this environment where everything just feels like financial pressure, right? Like all the things are so expensive. I always tell people insurance isn't going to make you money, but it can save your business. We put so much into our businesses. It's like birthing a child, right? It's a constant thing. It's running in the back of our head, even when we're trying to zone out or veg out or whatever, it doesn't matter. And then for just one thing that could have been handled by a policy, it's devastating.
Mm-hmm.
And so does it make you money? No, it's going to cost you a little bit of the money that you make, but it can definitely save your business.
And so for those business owners, listening who feel overwhelmed or behind, what is the smartest kind of first step that they can take this month to get covered without blowing the budget, without being overwhelmed, all the different things?
Yeah. I would tell people to stop Googling, get a coverage audit, a broker, and start small, layer intentionally. Nobody starts a business to keep it small, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like we have goals and we have, a vision. Layer intentionally, get the checklist and make it a part of your business strategy. If you just opened up, get that general liability in place, maybe professional liability, depending again on what you do. Sometimes it's not optional, right? You can't move forward without it. But then as things come in, make sure that you start checking off that list. Make sure you find a broker that you feel comfortable checking in with on a quarterly basis or set it up on your calendar to do so. You don't need all of the things. You just need the first right thing. And we go from there. As they say, progress beats perfection, right?
So I know with homeowners, you pay every 6 months or monthly or whatever every year
Every year is a renewal, but you should pay usually
through your loan payment or whatever. And then autos every 6 months. How do you pay for your homeowner or for your business insurance?
same. You can either do it on an annual basis, you can do it on a quarterly basis, you can do it on a monthly basis. And just like home and auto, sometimes there's fees if you do it on a monthly basis. Sometimes there's higher fees if you're using a credit card versus a checking account. That's going to depend on the carrier you use and what like payment system that they're using. You know what I mean? So
you have options there.
And then how often should people like check back in with you and reassess their coverage or see if they need to add more? Is that quarterly, 6 months, every year, every 5 years?
So I tell people when I do an intake and let's say you move forward with me, one of the questions that I'm going to ask right away is, what did you make last year? What's your projected gross income? And I always tell people, if you land a whale, right, and that projected income doubles or just goes up, anything I think above 15-20% of what you thought was going to be, check in with your broker and let them know that so that they can edit your policy. Okay. At renewal, of course, there's your broker should be checking with you prior to see if there's something better out there. Now, when I say this, sometimes people are just always price chasing. that's a red flag for carriers. So you want to be careful. If you're going to save $2, that's not worth it. If you're going to save a huge amount of money, I'm not in anybody's pocket. I don't know what a huge amount of money is. It could be different for everybody else, right? Like for some people, it's like even if $100 would be helpful right now. But you have to be cognizant of, also having a good, I don't know if rapport is the right word, but like a good track record, right, with your carrier, because they do pay attention to those things and rate you accordingly. But yeah, you want to make sure that is this the best price? And that's important in the liability space or in the business insurance space because different companies change their appetites often. This carrier might love this industry for now, and then all of a sudden they don't want that industry. Maybe too many claims came in for them specifically, not because of you, but maybe others, or they know something that we don't in regards to that specific industry. And so they jack up the rates really high. And that's their way of pushing you off.
Very sly. Very
A hundred
sly.
percent, 100%. And so that's kind of what a broker should be paying attention to because we get those clues throughout the year. We can see like carriers communicate to us what their desired risks are. And when we see that, that means that they're giving prime premiums to that specific industry. I'm seeing that happen a lot right now with manufacturing. Last year, I saw it a lot with auto shops, auto body shops. Every single one of my auto body shops, I had to move from one particular carrier that was really favorable to another that became extremely favorable. And the one that they were on, all of a sudden, just really jacked up rates. They just didn't want the business anymore for whatever. They don't tell you why.
Interesting. Is there like, do you have to wait to move or can you move your policy at any time?
You move it at any time. You can move it at any time and you will get a refund prorated, just like anything, home and auto. However, there are some carriers that will charge, it's called a minimum premium. So if you move within 30, 60 days, they might charge you a portion of that premium. But for the most part, that's usually like in specialty lines. For the most part, if you move, they'll give you your refund back and you forward with another carrier.
Okay, got it.
This has been a lot of great information, really gets just the conversation started, I feel like, because, then you have to go into your business and what your focus is and those different things.
Yeah, we talk a lot about why we start our businesses or why, especially women. And for us, it's a few things. I mean, for me, it's a lot of things, but typically it falls under the camp of I want financial freedom. I want to be able to go to my kids' soccer game, and not have to ask permission. I don't want a ceiling to my income. As we know, women are still underpaid. And, when we compare ourselves to men in corporate America, period, full stop. And so, what is your definition of financial freedom? Right? That differ between us. For some people, it's a yacht. That's not it for me, but and I'm not judging. It's not panicking when things happen in life and things happen in life all the time. It's just knowing one unexpected moment won't undo everything we've worked for. And for me specifically, earlier I talked about fourth grade career class day or whatever when we are looking at these people who come in and talk to us about their careers and how nobody like ran to the insurance broker to see what is it that you do? I want to do that. For me, financial freedom was taught to me by watching my mom not have it. And it wasn't because she wasn't a hard worker. It was, there were all of these things and it's why I took the path that I took. I'll never forget my mom after working almost 30 years, and asking me to go with her to this meeting where they were going to explain like the retirement route for them. And she worked at UIC Hospital. And at UIC Hospital, I don't know if anybody is familiar, like it's half publicly funded, half privately funded. They don't get Social Security, they get a pension, or that's what they were paying into. And, I went with her and they talked about the pension and the this and the that and Medicare. And I'll never forget saying like, "Hey mom, we need to go to the 401k meeting. The meeting's not over." 'Cause she was ready to break for lunch. And she was like, "I didn't participate in that." And I was so stunned because I almost 30 years, a match of like, I think it was like 6 or 7%. What do you mean? And her response was, "I didn't understand it. And I didn't want to like let go of any more money. I was a single mom." And it just angered me so much. And I sat down and explained the compound interest, the fact that they were matching, the fact that she probably wouldn't have noticed, even if she would have put in 2 or 3%, and she was like, "Nobody broke that down to me the way you're breaking it down. Nobody said that." And I have had that same conversation. Never mind that my mom was an immigrant and her first language was Spanish. And that in itself, right? These people come from other countries where there aren't regulations on insurance. That's not really a thing. Like they literally put their money in jars, mason jars, and under the mattress. They don't trust government. I mean, apparently we shouldn't be either, but that's a whole other conversation. But I've had that same conversation with regular Americans who have been here for generations. I have sat down with them when I talk to them about life insurance and other things, and they're like, "Yeah, we don't have any of that." What? Like, it's just shocking to me. And it's not because they're dumb. It's not because they're lazy. It's not because they're cheap. It's because they didn't have all of the information. And I'm not a gatekeeper. Like, this is not something that should be kept. And it's heartbreaking for me. And so financial freedom for me is knowing all of the things and making decisions accordingly that's going to fit my narrative and, help me and my family. When we talk about wealth gaps, generational wealth gaps, this is one of the biggest reasons that they exist.
I almost don't think I could tell your mom how it works. I'd feel so bad for explaining all the interest lost and everything else. I just would just be like, never mind, we'll talk about that.
And that's why we started purse strings, for exactly that reason. No one's giving this information and explaining why they need to get started on some of these things and why they should come first. And, more women, like you said, are opening their own businesses every day. And so no one's really talking to them about business insurance and how it works and what you need to get started with and what it typically costs and how you pay for it. That's what we're here for. Let's start asking the questions. Talk to Carmen. Let's ask us. We'll get you in front of the right people. But you go into business because you have a passion for something you love. And it's, sorry, Carmen, not typically insurance, but thank God Carmen knows all the answers. We can go to you to get the answers, right? But yeah, it's women helping women understand all that you need to know when you are starting your business.
And to be clear, my mom is fine. She was very frugal. I will say that things that we were able to do 30 years ago, 15 years ago, we're not able to frugal our way into wealth now, right? Like she was able to do some things. She was able to buy a house on her own and she ended up retiring. I think she stayed on because we did the math about the pension. And at some point, if you stay too long, it's like nothing or like, so I was like, okay, if you do 2 more years, you'll get this much more. And I tried to like, adjust it to COLA, inflation and like a lot, the presumed cost of living adjustment, which who would have thunk we would be in the situation we're in today, right? So she was able to squirrel away some things and do what she needed to do, which is even more infuriating because I know that she would have been able to do so much more had she participated in that. So to your point, I just think that people don't become fearless by avoiding fear. You got to get through it. You got to understand risk. But if you don't have somebody who is going to explain it to you not with the jargon and all of the acronyms and like, stop. Like none of that is necessary. Just in layman's terms, not because people are slow or not. It's not what you do. And so, that's another pet peeve of mine when I hear sometimes, insurance speak and it's like, why? Like they don't know what that is. Like just tell them what it is. Like you need a thesaurus and a dictionary and and ChatGPT on the side to be like, that's wild.
Well, then on your answer, you kind of already leaned into our last question of, what is your own definition of financial freedom? Do you want to add any more to that? You're doing a great explanation earlier.
No, for me, it's understanding risk. It's making sure that for me, financial freedom is choice, is having choice, is being able to say yes or no to things. We have to build to that, right? When you're starting a new business, there is no financial freedom. You are a slave to your business for the first couple of years. But if what you have in mind is being able to breathe and not have to work every single hour, unless that's your jam, right? But like every single hour of every single day, because if you don't, there is famine, that's not it. Right. And so if you don't have the protections in place and that is the life that you're living, and then something happens, you're going to start from zero. You're going to just throw it out and just like, forget it. I'm just going to go get a job. Like, you know what I mean? And so thinking about those things and having those protections in place, first and foremost, will assist you to have whatever version of financial freedom it is that you have. For me, it's not having red bottoms or an Hermès bag, although I don't know. I think they're kind of ugly. It's not all that. But that's not what it is for me. It's just being able to take a day. Like after this podcast, I am taking my kid to the Shed Aquarium.
Yay!
You know what I mean?
Can I go?
Yeah, and I just want to hang out with her. And like, I can do that. If I was working a regular 9 to 5, I probably wouldn't be able to. I will have my phone unless somebody is literally on fire. It's not that, like it'll be fine. I'll take care of it, but I can do that.
I love it. And I'm so jealous you're going to the Shed. Say hello to the penguins for me.
I love that she wants to go to the Shed with you. That's fabulous.
Yeah. Well, she's going to school to be a vet, so it doesn't surprise me because she knows the zoo is not happening. Like it'll have to be an indoor. Although today is seemingly nice, but it's supposed to rain, and I just off my hair. We're not doing rain.
You look fabulous.
Well, thank you, Carmen, so much for coming, sharing your expertise, opening this conversation, as it's so essential for business owners. Like you said, I mean, our businesses are our babies, and so we don't want anything to happen. So knowing that we can just purchase some protection, have it in place, have you on our team is essential. So encourage any listeners, reach out to Carmen, just get the conversation started, do that assessment and see where you stand. And just like you said, take that first step. Don't, not all at once, just one step at a time, and we'll make it through. So thank you so much, Carmen. We appreciate you and your time. All right. Talk to everyone soon. Bye. You've been listening to Women in Money, the shit we don't talk about. Now it's time to take what you've learned and make bold moves towards financial independence. Stay in the know by joining our newsletter for exclusive tools, resources, and updates that keep you financially fearless. Head to pursestrings.co and sign up today. Need a financial professional who gets it? Turn to PurseStrings' curated directory, your go-to resource for financial experts who know how to put you first. Love this episode? Leave us a review and help us empower even more women to own their financial power. Until next time, be financially fearless.